even now, the slightest thing can take me back. The way the sunlight catches in the turn of a wave, or a distant bird call, half heard, snagged in the breeze. We had been transplanted so dramatically from one place to another that it was almost impossible to make any comparisons with the past. Our life on the island was complete in itself. I never saw it as lacking in anything. I did not experience any of the feelings of strangeness and desolation that I had expected. I just knew that I had reached the place where I was meant to be.
I think the biggest regret of all, if I'm really honest to myself, if no one else, is that we actually left when we did. I think that probably we could have done another 10 years.
It seems strange to think that I'd never even heard the name of Skomer until I met Mike. Within a few weeks, I found it hard to imagine a time when Mike had not been part of my life. More than anything, Mike talked to me about Skomer, the island he had discovered as a 13-year-old boy.
We got to Skomer and there was something about it, I can't describe it, the feeling. Just the experience, the raw excitement, the fact that there was wildlife and it was accessible. I could see puffins.
The light caught and glowed against the pure white of the puffin's breast feathers. The beak showed brilliant red, new and unnaturally perfect. We could hear the scrabbling splash of feet scurrying across the water, and the swish of wings fighting against gravity to stay aloft. Becoming airborne is an exercise in pure determination. The rhythmic hum of the rapid wing beats is very distinctive. It is the sound of summer on Skomer. Despite the apparent sacrifices of leaving the mainland behind, I realised that Skomer was the first thing that I had ever wanted with any real passion. Everything we knew was confined within a little circle of sea, but far from being dull, it all mattered so much more. I couldn't remember anything on the mainland that would have created a pure sense of elation in the way that the seabirds returning to Skomer could.
When they first come on, they're nervous as hell, they're sort of tentative, they don't quite know that this is something they should be doing, and then eventually one or two will land and they take off immediately in panic. This sort of collective intelligence is as if they all begin to learn together. It's not so bad after all. It's safe, there's nothing trying to eat us, and they gradually start becoming more and more acclimatized.
There's nothing quite like when the cliffs are full of birds, tumbling, strutting and arguing. Most birds would return to the same one year after year, and they were so long-lived that some of these same individuals could have been acting out this ritual since before I was born. Above ground, the signs of emerging chicks were obvious. As soon as the young had arrived, the puffins could be seen returning to the cliffs with their beaks crammed full of fish. The long, thin sand eels, often a dozen or more, were draped down on either side of the bill like shimmering curtains. As the birds moved, sunlight drizzled over the rainbow colours of the fish. One of the things that struck me most forcibly about that first impression of the island was the number of corpses. Mike told me about an article written in the early 1900s. To protect Skomer's anonymity, it had been named as Golgotha, the place of skulls. I could see why. Despite these very obvious signs of predation, Skomer was one of the few places that offered the Manx shearwaters enough safety to risk coming on land.
Skomer, in a sense, is, in terms of seabirds, the most important island in Wales. Take the Pembrokeshire Islands, the Skomer, Skocum, Grasholm, and perhaps throw in Ramsey. Most important places in Great Britain, some of the most important places in Europe. As far as the shearwaters are concerned, the most important place in the world. All of these birds are very, very vulnerable when they're on land. They lay their eggs in nests which are on the ground or in burrows. There are rats on the mainland. There are even hedgehogs on the mainland. It's ground predators. Ramsey, just to the north of us, rats got on there sometime in the 18th century, and it took the RSPB better part of 20 years to clear them out. You just imagine rats getting on here, they'd be gone. So these islands are very, very special. It's very precious because, they're some of the very, very few sanctuaries, in a real sense, that are left to these creatures.
A visit to Grasholm was, by its nature, a rarity. Set amid miles of empty ocean, it was a destination that would have been far beyond the capabilities of our own boat. Grasholm is such a powerful and unique experience that my first encounter with the island stays with me. Dominated by one single and stunning feature, which becomes immediately obvious even across a mile of ocean. Its gannets. A haze of birds shimmered above it, like a swarm of pale bees hovering around a hive. Both the ultramarine sea and the sun-scorched white of the island were made more intense by the contrast they created. Directly overhead they wheeled round, skimming far above the boat. As they turned, their wings caught the sun with a blinding brightness that flickered into my eyes, already half closed against the brilliance of the sky. No trip to Grasholm could be anything less than memorable.
One of the experiences in Wales, or the most important wildlife experiences in Wales, has to be a night on Skomer when the shearwaters coming in.
I had no idea what shearwaters were. I had no idea the absolute impact they would have on my life. I can remember laying in bed that very first night, just listening to the sound of shearwaters, and then just below my window, I could hear the waves turning against the beach. The house was right on the edge of the cliff, so I could hear, literally just below my window, the waves turning against the shore. And the sound, just a complete, just overwhelming, not single birds, just a mesh of shearwater calls, all calling at once. And just thinking, this is wonderful. It's this high-pitched, gurgling kind of stream of notes all tumbling over each other, and when there are thousands of birds all calling at once, it's just like a fog of noise. The whole air is just full of noise, so you can't hear anything but shearwaters. It never once felt intrusive or difficult to live with it. I just felt what a privilege to lie here and listen to these birds. Who in the world can lie in their bed surrounded by shearwaters? It was just wonderful. We'd been on the island for quite a few days before I actually got out to go for a proper walk. All we'd been doing had been carrying stuff up from the landing stage along one narrow path. I think it was about 3 days before I actually saw the island. But what I had seen, the most spectacular thing I had seen, was the shearwaters. Everywhere I looked, There were dead shearwaters, and I was horrified. This is a sanctuary, these wonderful birds come here. How can so many of them be dead? And I said to Mike, what's happening? And he said something to me which stood me in perfect kind of stead for the rest of our time there, because it was something I had to learn from that first day. When you live surrounded by life, you're going to be surrounded by death. You cannot live with so many living things around you and not have these constant heartbreaking experiences of death.
The most important part of my life was the 10 years on Skomer, and that will never change. That sense of being part of nature, not just an observer, but actually part of it. It's a strange feeling.
I can remember when we left Skomer, people saying to me, you'll be looking for another island. And I thought, no, how can you ever replace Skomer? There are so many good and valid reasons to conserve nature, but perhaps we shouldn't always have to justify ourselves. The truth is that we do feel inexplicable emotional connections with these wild places. That's what I wanted to describe.
There were once men capable of inhabiting a river without disrupting the harmony of its life. That's what I strive for, and that's what Skomer taught me.